Today's project is to put the A340E into the car and get the transmission mount all bolted in. Before we put it in the car, I do have this transgo performance reprogramming kit. I guess you could call it reprogramming, but this is really a mechanical kit to shim the accumulators and do some other modifications to the valve body. I haven't found a whole lot of information about these online. I did find a couple people using them. The goal is to make that transmission last a little longer than it would stock. This was like 95 bucks on Rock Auto, and it looks fairly easy to install, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Here's the contents of the kit. So we got some springs, and then these act as a shim in the accumulator, I believe. And there's also some drill bits in here, so we'll be drilling parts of the valve body out. All right, it's pretty obvious in this clip we are removing the transmission pan. We have it flipped upside down. Now, when we got this pan off, I didn't take a clip of it, but the magnet had a lot of contamination on it. There's tons of metal flakes on it. We also found a Phillips head screw just floating in the oil pan. Did find out where that went, and I think this might be related to what you're going to see later in the video. All right, so this is the valve body. We're about to pull it apart. We have a couple holes to drill in it. I don't know if it got captured on video, but we did just shim and change the springs and the accumulators. This is not going to be an instructional video. All right, we are done. Drilled some holes in there, replaced some valves in here. This is like alien technology. I mean, how do you even design that? That blows my mind. So now we're gonna put it back together and cross our fingers that it actually works. Got the car on the lift for the first time in a long time. I forgot what it looks like underneath here. So we're about to mount the transmission in and get it all situated. All right, we got the transmission mounted in here, and Jacob is helping out. He's got this fancy laser measurement tool.
50.83 inches.
So we're getting Driveshaft link so I can order it. Lauren, what do you have to say?
Not a whole lot.
Ordered everything I needed from Summit for the cooling system at 3 p.m. yesterday, and it was here before noon. So just need to plumb up the radiator and this transmission cooler and go from there. I'm mounting the fans directly to the radiator. You really should have a fan shroud, but don't have a ton of room in here, and see how this works. So I got these basically zip ties that will pass through the radiator to attach it. All right, there we go, both fans on the radiator. These are SPOW fans, which in my experience are the best money can buy. This radiator is tiny, so I figured just try to put the biggest fans I can. You really should have a fan shroud, but I don't have quite enough room to use the stock ones, so that's how I ended up on these fans. Just got to cut all the zip ties, but I'll tell you what, it's a little bit harder than you think it would be to mount everything straight on there. How to make sure that this doesn't interfere with the fan, but we're all good. I honestly am worried that this thing's gonna overheat because that radiator is tiny, but we'll find out, especially with the added transmission cooler. Fingers crossed it doesn't though. It's a temperature sensor to put in line on the outlet of the transmission. These are sold together, and that probe bottoms out in that fitting. I mean, why would you sell that together? It's frustrating, but I have the fix. This is just an extension that will go on there and allow this to work. These Frigola push lock fittings, I highly suggest you pass on these. Super hard to assemble. I heated the hose up, froze the fitting, and used silicone spray, and they're just an absolute bear to get to push together. But this is the last fitting for the transmission cooler. Getting so close to being able to start this thing up. Final assembly on the turbo is happening. So this is a genuine Mac valve. Comes in a box like that. If yours doesn't come like that, could be a knockoff. They are out there. And a bunch of fittings and nylon tubing for boost control. I just mounted the turbo to the car for the final time. Got it clocked where it needs to go. This is a oil drain off of a Cummins, actually, like a 6.7 Cummins. And I find it pretty necessary for these tubular manifolds because if you're using a rubber line, it's going to be very close to that hot runner, so I highly suggest that. Here's the completed wiring harness, or let's say 95% complete. This didn't make it in the last video because I just had some things I was waiting on in the mail, but if I was to do this again, I would not use that K-Power board. There's a lot of unused wires in here, and I actually need to add some additional wires coming from the Haltech. This here goes to the transmission. That's why it's not terminated yet, because I need to do a little more research on that and figure out my wire length once it's in the car. This is for a flex fuel sensor. I would have just went ahead and wired this in, but I didn't have enough inputs in the harness, but I wanted to add the wiring there in case I want to add that someday. I plan on running the car on E85 and never running pump gas, but might be nice to have it in case I do decide I need that someday. This is the intake air temp wiring. I don't know the length on that since the intercooler piping is not done yet, so that's why that's not loomed. But like I said, 95% of the way done. Now I'm gonna put it on the car, fire this thing up. Calibrating the throttle body, it's doing things. And hear it moving. That's a good sign. So I love this thread sealant, but I just learned that it is not E85 safe. That is turned to liquid on there. When I pressurized the fuel system, it was leaking from the fuel pressure sensor. So unfortunately, that thing was really not fun to get out of there. I'm gonna go get some other thread sealant and put this thing back together, hopefully fire it up. One thing to note, my fittings that I was scared about leaking, they did leak, at least the front one, but I was able to get a half a turn out of it and it seemed to stop leaking and was holding 50 PSI. Okay, I think everything is plumbed up and hooked up and ready to start this thing, see if it's gonna run. I did dry crank it off camera. It's not building oil pressure. Did a lot of back and forth on if I should start it or not, but I'm gonna start it up, give it 3 seconds, see if it builds oil pressure. It's a little nerve-wracking. I'm by myself out here. I have the fire extinguisher ready, so let me go ahead and hook up the battery. Okay, hop in the car here. I'm not sure if I have my trigger settings right. I need to double check that real quick. I did have to add this button for the starter. Apparently there is a bug in the Haltech firmware. My start-stop button will not work, which is something I really want to get working. It's a cool feature to have, and the Haltech should be able to use it. Okay, that was the problem. It was the trigger arming voltage. We got oil pressure. We got oil pressure. Awesome. I did a really bad job videoing this process, but I was removing the crash bar here and then trimming it for the intercooler, and I didn't get a whole lot of clips of the entire intercooler install. I picked up a TIG welder about a week ago, been practicing a bunch, have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm starting on aluminum, which maybe isn't the smartest thing, but I came to the realization I really need to learn how to TIG weld with all my car projects, so here we are. So I've been working on the intercooler piping, and I'm about to try my first weld on aluminum tubing, which this might not turn out too great, but got to start somewhere. Welding that painted intercooler piping from the last clip did not go well. Ended up swapping out to some polished tubing from Vibrant. This clip is actually welding stainless. This is the downpipe. It's not me welding in this clip, it's my friend. He came and helped me and gave me some pointers. He welded about half of it and I did the other half. Turned out pretty good for my first time. It has been 7 weeks since the first start on the BRZ. And I've been waiting for this drive shaft the entire time. It finally showed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this thing up and cross my fingers that it fits. It fits. So glad that this thing fits. It's pretty tight in some areas, but I'm okay with that as long as it's not rubbing. So the reason I went with this drive shaft specifically are these billet ends that allow me to adapt a normal U-joint. This thing should hold up to some big horsepower, more horsepower than this car is gonna make for now. But I think the next step here is gonna be put some water in it and back it outside. It's April 10th, and that's probably gonna be close to when this video goes up. So the BRZ is basically done. The intercooler piping's all done, drive shafts in, everything's pretty much done. This thing is ready to go down the road. The first start happened back on January 30th. I meant to have this video up way sooner, but I ordered the drive shaft that same day because I wanted to verify that this thing ran before dropping over $1,000 on a drive shaft. It took 7 weeks to show up, which maybe I've already talked about in this video. Put the new drive shaft in, went to go drive. Forward clutch pack must be stuck in the transmission because it goes forward in neutral, it goes forward in reverse, and it goes forward in drive. So I need to swap the transmission. That's gonna be the easiest thing to do. Got a new transmission from eBay. It just showed up. So the project right now is to rip this transmission out, get the new one in as quick as possible. I don't think what I did to the transmission had anything to do with this failure. I think it was already like that. I got this transmission back in 2017 with the 2JZ GTE that is in the Supra. I think it was already messed up. So this new one, I'm not gonna swap the valve body right off the bat. I want to make sure this thing drives, and if it does, I'll take the valve body that we modified out of the other transmission and slap it in this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and upload this video. I guess the next one will be the first drive, street tuning it, and maybe some track action. So thanks for watching. Quick bonus clip of the Supra. Went to the season opener car meet here the other day, did a pull when I left, and broke the timing belt tensioner. Got super lucky. The engine seems like it's not hurt. This is a known problem on high revving, high horsepower 2JZs. So you can buy billet tensioners, which I have done. Got a nice Powerhouse Racing tensioner on there with a new bolt, torqued to spec, and check this out. It is not quite tight. So the threads in the oil pump are trashed, which means I either A, need to pull the engine out of the Supra to replace the oil pump, or I can try like a time cert threaded insert on there, which I don't even know if this is possible. I haven't found anybody who's actually done it. Because that's a blind hole that goes into the oil pump. Might get metal shavings in there. So yeah, when it rains, it pours. Wish one of my cars was working now that it's springtime and getting nice out.